So much to break down there. Joining me now is the Director of Communications for the Ukrainian Congress Committee of America, Andrij Dobriansky. Andrij, good afternoon. Andrij, let's listen to this sound, and then I want to chat with you on the other side.
I did actually say, would you mind if I gave a couple of thousand tomahawks to your opposition? I did say that to him. I said it just that way. He didn't like the idea. He really didn't like the idea. Tomahawk is a vicious weapon. It's a vicious, offensive, incredibly destructive weapon.
A vicious, incredibly destructive weapon. Andrij, good afternoon again. President Zelenskyy has made it clear that he would like to have these weapons. He actually put out a statement saying we expect the momentum of curbing terror and war that succeeded in the Middle East will help to end Russia's war against Ukraine. Andrij, how important are these weapons to Ukrainian President Zelenskyy?
When you're talking about tomahawks, this is something that actually President Trump has been mentioning himself. So up until yesterday and that conversation with Putin and that remark to the press, all that President Trump has been leaning towards is the release of authorization for Ukraine to get them eventually. Now, in that graphic, it says fired from ships. That's the key point here, that there are new mobile land-based launchers for these systems that Ukrainians would have to be trained on. This is not a system that Ukraine would be using right away, but it would be an effective way for President Trump to pressure his European allies to start releasing the kind of 500-mile systems that they have so far been reluctant. So this is very similar where the United States had to take a lead and promising to eventually send Abrams tanks, which they did, but that allowed countries like England to send their Challenger tanks, that allowed Germany to send their tanks. So this is not just an important piece of munition because it can target the facilities that are making the drones, the ones you report on every night, that they target Ukraine with 500, 600 drones. They're made in a facility over 800 miles away from Ukraine that is staffed by North Korean manufacturers and soldiers. That's the facility we want to hit in Russia so that we don't have to spend all this money on defensive weapons to protect Ukraine from that.
Andrij, we're keeping an eye on the possible arrival pretty soon of President Zelenskyy. We have a split screen with you and the White House there. So should he appear in the next hour or so, we will be ready to take that live. I do want to go back to that map, though, Andrij, because you talked about the range of these missiles, and I want to talk about why that's important. Because the Tomahawk, the range from Ukraine, it looks as though not only would it be able to hit Moscow, but it would actually be able to get into areas that are key points of military installations and key holding sites for the Russian military.
Well, the United States and Ukraine are in agreement on this, and specifically, they talked about this, President Trump, President Zelenskyy, at the UN on September 27th, where they came to an agreement that they're doing the right thing. I want to point out to the American audience that this strategy of hitting Russian fuel production, whether it's natural gas or crude oil, this is what Ukraine has been doing with the partnership of the United States. It started with one facility in June, and it ramped up to, by September, we hit 31 fuel facilities in Russia. That's a decrease of 17 to 20% of their output. This is what President Trump has been talking about. Let's get Russian gas and oil out of the rest of the world to put pressure on Russia. But in the meantime, he is ready to feed Europe with an incredible level of liquefied natural gas and American oil. So it's a win-win, this strategy that they came up together. When you're talking about these missiles, they can hit the airports and areas of Moscow with their drones. Ukraine has demonstrated that. What we need is to change the battlefield. So we're not just talking about the different fuel depots that are within range of the drones now of Ukraine's border, but we want to be able to hit deeper. And that means that Russia now needs to move their air defense systems, not just from Ukraine's border, but deeper into Russia.
Andrij, what about the reporting that Kelly just said from the White House of Viktor Orban possibly trying to arrange a trilateral meeting? How likely is that between Mr. Trump, Mr. Trump, President Zelenskyy, and of course Vladimir Putin?
Well, for Hungary, first and foremost, that's one of the countries that Trump has been upset about because he can't convince them to stop buying Russian oil. So there's plenty of Mr. Trump and Mr. Orban to talk about making sure that they follow the rules that Mr. Trump puts down on the table. But as far as actually hosting something, this is very similar to what Putin suggested back in May when Europe was ready to put harsher sanctions on, he said, no, 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 don't worry, I'm going to fly to Istanbul and meet with Trump and Zelenskyy in Istanbul. That never happened. But what did happen is that Europe delayed its sanctions. Much like this, the Alaska summit happened, and President Trump got very angry at that. There's new reporting out just yesterday about how President Putin drove President Trump crazy, talking about history, talking about other things, and President Trump just wants to get to a deal. So I think the strategy that that Trump and Zelenskyy put together about putting the pressure on oil facilities, and also I'll remind everybody that the Senate leader Jon Stewart said that sanctions are still available on Russian oil tankers. This maximum pressure is what Trump wants to do, because it's exactly what Putin has been doing. Every time that Putin and Trump have talked, he has launched missiles on Ukraine the same day. I think Trump wants to reverse that.
Andrij Dobriansky with the very latest for us. Andrij, thank you so much.
Thank you.